The Obama campaign wants to make sure Americans remember Mitt Romney's plan for public service employees, especially when it comes to teachers, firefighters, and police officers.
Instead, he wants to add more to government. He wants another stimulus. He wants to hire more government workers. He says we need more firemen, more policemen, more teachers. Did he not get the message of Wisconsin? The American people did. It's time for us to cut back on government and help the American people.
President Obama used his weekly address to touch on the importance of hiring more public employees, namely teachers.
The point is, teachers matter. One study found that a good teacher can increase the lifetime income of a classroom by over $250,000. A great teacher can change the course of a child's life. So the last thing our country needs is to have fewer teachers in our schools.
The Obama campaign is not taking this one lightly. A new web ad highlights state and local officials in Massachusetts questioning the job-cutting policies of Mitt Romney when he was governor of the state.
Local government was cut dramatically. We lost police, firefighter, teachers at rapid rates, people that directly impacted the lives of every citizen. Our cities were less safe, not as clean, larger class sizes.
Republicans want to pretend government job losses don't hurt the economy, but the facts are not on their side. We are currently experiencing the only time in the last 30 years in which public sector jobs have not been part of the post-recession recovery. And they wonder why the current recovery is sluggish. Even Ronald Reagan added public sector jobs coming out of the recession. Public employment was up 3.1% under Reagan, but down 2.7% under President Obama and the Republican Congress. Those jobs make a difference in the overall unemployment picture. According to the Wall Street Journal, unemployment would be a full percentage point lower with those public sector jobs factored in. It all has an effect on the economy. The Center for Budget and Policy Priorities says, quote, private and public sector workers who are laid off or who see their pay reduced by less and further reduce economic activity. Today, the Romney camp remains steadfast in its denial. Here's Romney supporter John Sununu on MSNBC.
You have cities in this country in which the school population peaked 10, 15 years ago. And yet the number of teachers that they have maintained has not changed. I think this is a real issue, and people ought to stop jumping on it as a gaffe and understand there's wisdom in the comment.
Sununu sees wisdom in the idea of reducing the number of teachers in this country, even though the census numbers show an increase in school enrollment every year. By 2015, enrollment is projected to be nearly 10 million students higher than it was at the beginning of the last decade. Of course, it wouldn't be a full court press from the GOP without words from the real leader of the Republican Party.
Nobody is opposed to cops or firefighters or teachers, but they aren't private sector jobs. They do not contribute to economic growth.
I guess Rush Limbaugh doesn't think teachers, firefighters, or police officers ever spend any money. It's frustrating enough to have Republican spokesmen push this bill of goods, but it's even worse when the people responsible for public job losses try to do the same. Vocal Obama Chris Christie is a walking billboard for slash and burn governance at the state level. He ordered 1,200 New Jersey public employees laid off in 2010. The consequences were immediate and devastating. Take the city of Camden, New Jersey. After 168 police officers were laid off in 2010, violent crime spiked 20%. The city needed $2.5 million in grant money to rehire 50 officers. The story is no different this year. Camden is one of 29 cities that have received FEMA grants to adequately staff their fire departments and emergency services after cuts at the state level. So the federal government is still on the hook, paying for jobs that governors like Chris Christie did away with so recklessly. But I can understand the mentality of these governors and Mitt Romney, especially when it comes to education. You see, I attended the same boarding school as Mitt Romney for a year and a half in the mid-'70s. I won a scholarship to the prestigious Cranbrook School. I saw the small classrooms, the individual attention paid by teachers, the constant nurturing of students, and the freedom to range widely in academic pursuits. This was unlike the experience at the school I eventually graduated from in Detroit's inner city. We had secondhand textbooks, dilapidated facilities, and overcrowded classrooms. The contrast was dramatic. Limited economic investment did not allow Northwestern High School to provide the same service as Cranbrook. But I believe the teachers at Northwestern High School were even more inspiring because they had to transcend their resources, often paying out of their own pockets to make sure the students were protected. They had to do more with a lot less. These teachers, like most people who go into public service jobs, provide great value to our society. I understand why Mitt Romney and others from his background have a hard time seeing that. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Tonight's question: does Mitt Romney really believe that public servants are the problem? Text A for yes, text B for no to 622-639, or go to our blog at .msnbc.com. I'll bring you the results later in the show. Joining me now is E.J. Dionne, MSNBC contributor, Washington Post columnist, fellow Georgetown professor, and author of Our Divided Political Heart. Welcome to the show, E.J. Dionne.
Good to be with you, colleague.
All right, my friend. Look, is the Romney camp way off track with their message on this one? They seem to be ranging far afield of the facts and the truth.
Well, I think that they are very much on the line of the Republican Party and modern conservatism, which has turned itself largely into an anti-government creed. Conservatives didn't used to be quite this dogmatically anti-government, but they are now. And I think that one of the reasons this happened is that progressives weren't tough enough in actually defending government's role. I mean, conservatives say all the time, government doesn't create jobs. The answer to that is, yes, government does create jobs. There's a report from the CBO that showed without the stimulus, we probably would have had something like 3.3 million fewer jobs, and we might have fallen into recession back in 2010. And so it's not just that these jobs are important. They're important, as in the case of teachers, to economic growth. So are the construction jobs government creates. But as you suggested, they're very important for the money that people spend and put into the rest of the economy. The Republicans right now, the Republicans, along with conservatives in Europe, are arguing for austerity and saying cutting government is the key to everything. But that goes right against all the lessons we learned, for example, in the Great Depression.
Yeah. Well, look, EJ, if you get that message and you understand that as a prominent political columnist and professor, why can't the Democrats really make that message very clear and visible? Why aren't they more articulate about that?
Well, I think there's a lot of fear because, first of all, we went through periods when people lost faith in government all the way back, beginning with Vietnam and Watergate, and that the conservatives have been at the anti-government message for 30 years. And so it's not that they're inarticulate. It's that I think they're constantly trimming a little bit to play to the anti-government sentiment they know is out there. So say, yes, we like government, but I really love the private sector. Or, well, yes, I know there are problems with government, but. And I do think that there should be two halves to this message. You know, the first half is government has done and can do good things. And one of the points in my book is to look back to people like Alexander Hamilton, Henry Clay, and Abraham Lincoln, who saw a very robust role for government in building the country. And then that has to be accompanied with a message of government reform. We care about government so much that we want it to work even better. And I think that's the kind of message that progressives and liberals have to put out there.
Absolutely. So Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker responded to Romney's comments on Face the Nation yesterday.
I think in the end, the big issue is that the private sector still needs more help, and the answer is not more big government. I know in my state, our reforms allowed us to protect firefighters, police officers, and teachers. That's not what I think when I think of big government.
Do you think Romney made things difficult for Republican governors who've always tried to make the case that they're cutting non-essential services? That's clearly not the case.
Well, first of all, I think that when you find yourself to the right of Scott Walker, you might want to reconsider your position. But, you know, I think Republican governors are split on this. I think there were some who really welcomed the stimulus assistance. Governor McDonnell out in Virginia, who's very conservative, recently said that the stimulus was helpful. I think there are others who really are ideologues and want to cut government and are going to stick to the party line. But it is amazing that Scott Walker is somebody you think of as a very, very conservative governor, but he realized the costs of looking like you're against cops and firefighters and teachers.
All right, E.J. Dionne, thank you so much, my friend.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Remember to answer tonight's questions there at the bottom of the screen. And share your thoughts on Twitter at Ed Show. We want to know what you think. Republican Congressman Darrell Issa is on a political witch hunt with Attorney General Eric Holder his target. That's next. And later, go back to Kenya. The Supreme Court busts a birther lawsuit, but the believers are alive and well. We'll be right back.